Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in to this talk and getting involved with the Product Marketing Festival. We hope you've been enjoying the stages and the talks so far, and you're in for another good one right here. But before we kick things off, we just wanted to say a quick thanks to everyone who's helped make this festival happen. Sponsors, partners, attendees and speakers. Shameless but obligatory plug, and in case you missed it, we recently launched our very own product marketing certification. If you haven't already, check it out. Enjoy this session.
Monday.com is a work OS designed to manage any project or workflow with ease. The flexibility of the platform empowers teams to work in a fast, dynamic way. Let's start with a board. Here is where the magic happens. It's a fully customizable table where you can shape any workflow in minutes. From sales and marketing to HR, support, and engineering, you name it. Track everything your team is working on, collaborate with your teammates, and visualize your work data in different ways. To ensure you get off to a smooth start, we've created ready-made templates so you can start collaborating instantly. So go to Monday.com and start your free trial today.
Hi, Product Marketing Festival. This is Tom Hayes coming to you from beautiful Concord, Massachusetts. I'm speaking today about the Dao of CI and achieving balance in your competitive intelligence. And I recorded my presentation yesterday and found that waking up this morning, a profound need for more balance. One reason I chose this topic was because of the distressed state of the world, thanks to all of the pandemic. That stress is only compounded with all of the unrest and injustice that's happening here in America right now. So I wanted to find just a moment to think about how to achieve personal balance, professional balance, and in the hopes that that might lead to a larger sense of balance and belonging in society at large. So I've connected with many of you through the PMA Slack channels and through other product marketing events. I'm a passionate advocate for product marketers and the power of product marketing in companies. And I wanted to dive a little bit into how I think about competitive intelligence. So that's the purpose of this talk today. And I hope I can provide some different perspectives than what you usually read and hear on competitive intelligence. So one of the things that we do as a company that's very natural for product marketers is to help our employers and our products find the right path. That's what our obsession with positioning and messaging and storytelling and launching the products to the right audiences is about, carving the path, which is very much in the Taoist tradition. And we're also the persona of people who are passionate and energetic and thoughtful and curious and self-sacrificing, perhaps sometimes to our own professional detriment. So we ourselves need balance in all of the tasks that we do. I see competitive intelligence as a foundational task for understanding the market and understanding how to proceed on that path. But it's often the sort of thing that once you get started, you can't pull back from. So your persona, I think I nailed. You're a product marketer. You knew this was going to be in here. And this is the Bagua of Taoist thought. I'm going to get metaphysical here for just a second. Promise it won't be for long. I'm a geometry nut. And what really is awesome about this symbol, of course, is that it is exactly a split between the dark and the light. The circle on the outside represents the whole. And there's not a dividing line. It's more fluid than that. And the division is then invaded at its very heart by the opposite. So dark is invaded by light, light is invaded by dark. If you trace one, you end up inexorably on the whole. So one of the dimensions of Chinese thought on this symbol system is the idea that the white represents the thought of Kongzi, the Confucian master, also known as Confucius. who wrote the Analects, and the white represents the rational side, the mastery and the ritual of a deliberate tradition, basically carefully architecting a social reality through storytelling. Sounds a lot like product marketing to me. On the other side, we have the Taoist thought of Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao Te Ching, and he was more interested in promoting the emotional side of human life and getting back to a natural, simple, simplistic state. For me as a product marketer, I've often struggled with this aspect. How can I do my job without all of the frameworks and the templates and the carefully constructed thought processes? And so letting go of that, is it even possible? I think it is to a degree. And I think it's really about finding a little bit more room for creative, emotional thinking, which we do to a certain degree when we're talking about things like our buyers. And we're looking for simplicity of message as well. So it is something that comes natural to us, but perhaps doesn't fit into this carefully constructed frame that we like to build. Water is a very important symbol in Taoist thought. And it is this master symbol because it is so strong yet so weak at the same time. Water can carve canyons, but it does it without effort. And so achieving that sort of balance is the goal. Water also will fill up any available space. And I feel like that's where product marketers sometimes overreach and don't say no enough and ask enough to say, why do we do this? So I encourage you to think about that in your life. And with that, we're done with the metaphysics. So moving into competitive intelligence, it is something that provides a lot of power. And it is something that also gives you the illusion of power because you can't always know what your competitors are going to do. And when you try to understand and you dig a little bit deeper and you discover something, ultimately that just opens up more questions. And so you get into this dark hole at the center of the rational space where it could be endless if you let it. So how much is enough? What is enough? I think to answer that question, we really have to say, what is a competitor? And why should we pay attention to the competition at all? Unfortunately, the competition is soaring. And these numbers are from a few years ago. We don't actually know the current numbers of competitors in this study. There are various other studies you can find. I think whether the path is high or low, whether it's continuing to double every other year, may be a little bit unrealistic. But regardless, I feel like within the first year, most companies are seeing a huge rise in competitive pressure because there are these things that make it so much easier to compete in the world today. There's access to more technology. There's access to more markets, the ability to create a team that doesn't necessarily live in the same place gives companies more flexibility and allows more companies and more entrepreneurial activity to develop. That's great at one level. People always say that competition is good because it validates a market. Those people are not the people that are tasked with following that. And so I think that often that throws us out of balance. The expectation that the task is not changed has made it more difficult. So there's also this perspective of, on one side, we have competitive intelligence, and on the other side, we have market intelligence. As product marketers, we need to be the masters of our market. We need to understand it, ideally better than anybody. But that's something that this artificial division, in my mind, it's false. Ultimately, a competitor today could be a partner and a friendly tomorrow. And likewise, an organization that is a market player, someone that's in your target segments, but not competitive with you directly, can become a competitor tomorrow. So I like to think of competitive intelligence more broadly than most people. And I think that it really should encompass knowing the market together, both from the competitive side and from the market player side. Of course, everyone talks about direct and indirect competition. And then there's this third category, the tertiary category, which is more or less the corollary for the market players that I mentioned before. When we think about the competition, what I see as direct and indirect is that it's all about the same need. It's whether the solution is different or not, and whether the buyers are different or not. The company is making a decision, the person is making a decision to buy based on that need. Whereas complementary and neighboring, which is a division that I make within that tertiary set, is this idea that it could be a related need or a different need. But understanding how you fit into the world of those complementary solutions, those complementary products, and those that are not necessarily for your buyer, but for other buyers, is an important thing to keep in mind. Of course, that creates so much to do. Now I've expanded your competitive set from 9.6 in 2015 to 40, 50. I don't know exactly how many it might be for you. It could be hundreds in certain cases if you have a wide set of products. So that doesn't lend itself to balance very well. So I like to think about competition in a different frame, and that is about how we are competing and what sorts of competition we are we trying to make. We're all vying for the attention of our buyers, and we're vying not just with our competitors, but also with everything else that's happening in the world around us, with all of the entertainment venues, with all of the personal commitments. We have limited attention. It's kind of amazing that we can keep track of anything at all in this day and age. So at a certain level, we're all competing for attention, but it's a base level. And as we move up the pyramid, we start to see that the capabilities of what you are offering become more important. And then we get into the ephemeral area of value. How do we know what we're providing is valuable? What about the competitor? How do they frame value for their users? Usually, there's no way to compare apples to apples here. And so it's about understanding that framing that they're using and understanding your framing and putting those against each other. The experience level is newer. It's more common in the B2C world, less common in the B2B world. But we'll talk about that in a little bit more. This idea that we are competing to create an experience is something that is going to become more and more important. And it has been very powerful in product-led organizations already. Finally, I think the real competition is going to be at the brand level. And that's something that's been true always on the B2C side. But I believe it's going to move up more and more. And your brand voice is going to be one of the ways that you compete most effectively against another organization. Things become more complex as an organization to pull off as you move up the pyramid, and they become more under your control as you move down the pyramid. When we think about your buyers and how that shapes the competition, I think it's important to note that whenever you enter a new market, whenever you have a new offering, you are creating not only a new buyer, but a new set of competition. And as a product marketer, I've often been given here's where we're going, and without any sense of how it fits into that market. So ideally, you can move the organization to build some awareness of that before we have new initiatives, new products, new business models, so that you can understand the competitive set up front and build that into the discussion. Here's one way of thinking about this from the B2B world on the left to the B2C world. One of the axes is the user and the buyer. Another is how vertical or horizontal. Another is the ability to make something your own versus having it served on a plate to you. And then finally, we start to look at the effect of geography, and whether we're looking for a more of a platform solution, a true platform that has breadth, or a depth of specialization. So those are the modes of competition that you'll often want to pay attention to. But that's a lot of variables. And so let's reduce it. I like to think about it in terms of what your competitors are selling to the buyer. Is it a light redesign? Is it something that we're going to hang some new art and do some painting and prettify the home? Or are we really talking about a remodel where we have to do some sort of transformational change, but the base layout, the base place does not change? And then on the high end of what you're asking a company to do and what your competitors are asking a company to do is design and build from scratch. And ultimately, I think it comes down to the axis of fear and hope. The fear is driving the easy decision. And by the way, most companies live here in the middle in the remodel zone, in my opinion. So remodel versus remodel is going to be the primary mode of competitive analysis for me. As we move up the scale to new build, we get to more of a hopeful aspect. But you're never going to know. You're never going to have full certainty and about your new neighbors, or when you actually have built the house and the bathroom door opens the wrong way. So that creates this other dimension of how much the experience drives the decision making and how much the value drives the decision making. So next, we want to consider about the stage of growth from an organizational standpoint, where you are as a company and where you are as a product marketing team, including your stakeholders. Here's another one that you've seen a lot. We live at the intersection of these teams, but not all of us do. And that changes over time. So I think building that into an understanding of what is the growth pattern that I've seen in product marketing organizations in terms of competitive intelligence. On the low end of the scale, we start with one PMM, hopefully early in the company. They're very product focused because the sales are new and product market fit may not be identified yet. Up front, they may spend as much as 80% of their time, but then that gets whittled down to watching the market and watching the competition much less. As we move up the scale, we see the growth of a handful of PMMs to leading to the creation of a dedicated competitive intelligence function. But it probably fits best within the product marketing team. And then at the top end of the scale, in much larger companies, the competitive intelligence function is shared across teams. And that becomes a resource for product marketing, as well as other key teams like strategy and corporate development. The CI partners, at least from the B2B perspective, tend to shift a little bit. And that's why you see this rotating. And as you move up the chart, you move into a mode of customer success and retention being more important and a more valuable partner on the competitive front, and product becoming an important one, but a little bit de-emphasized against the other external facing teams. I don't know that that's the right way to think about anything. However, it seems very prescriptive. And so I would challenge that conception and try to simplify it. Ultimately, what I see the pattern of companies is, are they competing? Is their mindset about their market first? They're obsessed with the competition and what the competition is doing, or are they innovating? Are they thinking about, I'm going to out innovate the competition, therefore I don't have to think about the competition? So companies that tend to be overly focused on competition live in this mature market space, or they may have a weaker position in the market, and their leadership may have created a more tactical culture. So that leads to an unbalanced perspective and too much of gotcha, feature comparison. What's the competition doing? We have to do that. It's a problem. it's ultimately a form of paranoia that is unhelpful to the organization. On the other side, the problem is one of myopia. They don't see the train wreck coming because they're so focused on innovation, they've lost touch with what the market's doing when they have a very strong position, or they're in a very immature market, or the leadership is very much focused on vision and delivering on that vision. So I think as product marketers, what we want to do is really focus on creating the balance. And I would argue you can be the fulcrum in your organization and work on becoming influential across teams to find the right balance between a competition focus and an innovation focus. That will give you this wu wei, the perfect efficaciousness for yourself, and also make your organizations more effective if they can treat competition as something that is just as valid and just as valuable as innovation. So we can steady this ship and we can make the company better in our role at the center of all of those teams. In closing, I just wanted to finish up with another quote because I think it really speaks to me about product marketers and what we do. It also speaks to the state of the world and what we need. So this knowing others is intelligence, this compassion that we have, the empathy that we develop for our buyers and their problems is super important to product marketing. And sometimes we do that at the neglect of our own needs. And so being more in touch with that is something that I seek in my professional and personal life. The other piece of this puzzle is this idea of mastering others, of competition, and that being the ultimate strength, when that needs to be balanced as well with mastering yourself and to make yourself the most effective that you can be for your employer. I hope that was interesting and different and perhaps comforting, and you take something away from it. I'm on LinkedIn. Find me. Love to engage and hear more about what you're doing to be a great product marketer. Thanks.